He threw the greatest party in French history. The next morning, he was arrested. Nicolas Fouquet was Louis XIV's finance minister. Brilliant, generous, indispensable. In 1661, trying to win back the king's favor, he staged an evening at his chateau that stunned Europe. The food, the fountains, the fireworks, the play by Molière, all dedicated to the king's glory. Fouquet thought he was impressing his master. He was actually doing something far more dangerous, outshining him. 3 weeks later, he was in chains, spending his last 20 years in a mountain fortress, alone. This is the world Robert Greene is writing about, not the world as we wish it were. Fair, transparent, rewarding to the deserving, the world as it actually operates. Power flows not just to the talented, but to those who understand the invisible rules that govern human interaction. The ones who learned those rules are still here. The ones who didn't are not. The 48 Laws of Power was published in 1998 and has never been out of print. It has been banned from American prisons. Authorities were concerned it was teaching inmates how to manipulate guards. It has been read by presidents and gangsters, by Silicon Valley CEOs and military strategists. It is simultaneously the most praised and the most condemned book in modern self-help publishing. And the reason it provokes such strong reactions is simple. It tells the truth about power that most books are too polite to say. By the end of this video, you will understand how power works in human relationships. The laws most people break without realizing it. The invisible mistakes that quietly end careers and relationships, and the strategic thinking that separates those who rise from those who stay stuck. This is not a comfortable book, but it is one of the most important. And the first law, the one most people violate most often, is where everything starts. Law 1, never outshine the master. Fouquet's story is Greene's opening example for a reason. It captures the most common power mistake that talented, ambitious people make, demonstrating their abilities to openly to those above them. They solve problems too brilliantly. They make presentations too polished. They shine, and in doing so cast a shadow over the very person who has the power to promote or destroy them. The dynamic is not logical. A brilliant employee should be an asset, but power is not logical. It is psychological. When you make your master feel inferior, you trigger something ancient and dangerous. The survival instinct of the person at the top. They don't announce their discomfort. They just quietly, methodically, begin to look for ways to remove you. Years later, you find yourself out in the cold, unable to understand why. Fouquet never understood. But here's what most people get wrong about this law. It isn't about hiding your talent. It is about directing your talent. Make your master look good and you become indispensable. The architect Jules Mansart understood this at the court of Louis XIV. When presenting designs to the king, he would deliberately include a small flaw, something the king could identify and correct. Then Mansart would react with theatrical amazement, praising the king's superior eye in front of the court. By 30, Mansart was appointed the king's personal architect, overseeing the expansion of Versailles itself. Less talented than several rivals, more strategically intelligent than all of them. The lesson is not to be certain, it is to be patient. Your time to shine will come, but it comes through strategic positioning, not raw display. Let the master believe the brilliance is partly theirs. Then when their position weakens, you are the one who rises, because you have already been doing the real work. Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Emperor Michael III of Byzantium had a problem familiar to many rulers. Young, inexperienced, surrounded by people he couldn't fully trust, his solution seemed obvious. Give real power to his most loyal friend, a man who owed him everything. That man was Basilius, a groom from peasant stock, whom Michael had rescued from obscurity, educated, enriched, and elevated to chief counselor. 4 years, the arrangement worked. Basilius advised. Michael rewarded. The friendship seemed real, the loyalty absolute. Then Michael asked his friend to repay some of the money he had been given. Basilius refused with an expression of pure contempt. Michael realized he had built a monster. His friend had outgrown his gratitude, forgotten that his entire world had been constructed by the emperor's generosity. Weeks later, Michael awoke surrounded by soldiers. Basilius watched as they killed him, then proclaimed himself emperor and rode through the streets holding his former master's head on a pike. And this is the part nobody wants to say. friends make the most dangerous enemies. Greene's argument is not that you should trust no one. It is that friends are structurally more dangerous than former enemies in positions of power. A friend already has access. A friend knows your weaknesses. A friend has been given things without earning them, and unearned gifts breed entitlement, then resentment. A former enemy, given a role, knows exactly why they were chosen and what they owe. They have more to prove and more to lose. Emperor Sung understood this. When he took power, he didn't imprison his rival generals. He retired them with wealth and estates, turning potential wolves into docile lords. His reign was among the most stable in Chinese history. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. Otto von Bismarck had spent his entire career dreaming of German unification and war with Austria. So when the Prussian parliament was inflamed with war fever in 1850, everyone expected him to lead the charge. Instead, he stood up and gave a calm speech, praising Austria, counseling peace, warning against premature war. The chamber was stunned. His allies confused, his opponents disarmed. The king, grateful for the unexpected moderation, made him a cabinet minister. From that position, Bismarck methodically built the military capacity Prussia had lacked, waited for the precise moment, and then crushed Austria, achieving exactly the unification he had always wanted. He had wanted war the entire time. He simply understood that announcing his intentions would have ended his career before he had the power to carry them out. The most successful people in history are not those who declared their plans. They are those who revealed only what served their purposes at each specific moment. But here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable, because you are being read right now. Every interaction you have is an act of intelligence gathering by the people around you. When you talk too much about your goals, your grievances, your plans, you hand ammunition to people who may one day use it against you. This is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. Greene identifies the blank, unreadable expression, the poker face of the powerful, as one of the most important strategic tools in existence. Say less than necessary. Let people fill silence with their own interpretations. The person who controls information controls the interaction. Law 5. Reputation. Guard it with your life. P.T. Barnum understood something most people never learn. The battle is rarely won in the moment. It is won in what people believe about you before you walk into the room. Barnum spent decades cultivating a reputation not for honesty or excellence, but for spectacle and bold deception. Everyone knew was deception. When he spread rumors that his exhibits were frauds, people paid to come see if the rumors were true. His reputation for audacity drew more crowds than any straightforward advertisement ever could. Reputation precedes you like a shadow and defines you before you speak. When Rommel's reputation as the desert fox spread through North Africa, entire British divisions were evacuated at his approach, even when his forces were outnumbered 5-1. The reputation did more work than the tanks. When Kissinger arrived at a negotiation, his reputation for closing deals created pressure on all parties, because being the one who couldn't satisfy Kissinger was itself a kind of defeat. Reputation is not image management. It is Leberach. It multiplies your power without requiring any additional effort. You're about to see what most people never realize. Reputation can be destroyed in a single afternoon. Greene is equally focused on how reputations collapse. One false move, one opponent who seeds doubt in the minds of observers, and the edifice you spent years building begins to crack. Edison spent years trying to destroy Tesla's reputation over the AC versus EC current war, publicly electrocuting animals to make AC look dangerous. The campaign damaged Edison's own standing more than Tesla's. The lesson: attacking a rival requires precision and plausible deniability. Blunt attacks expose your desperation. Subtle ones, a well-placed doubt, a quiet withdrawal of endorsement, a raised eyebrow at the right moment, are far more lethal. Law 6. Court attention at all cost. Barnum appears again. No one understood the attention economy of the 19th century better than he did. When he hired a man to silently lay bricks in a strange pattern around several city blocks, saying nothing and answering no questions, hundreds began following him within hours. By day's end, over 1,000 people had paid to enter Barnum's museum just to keep watching. The bricklaying man never explained himself. He didn't need to. Mystery is the most powerful form of attention. Greene's argument in Law 6 is counterintuitive. Quality does not speak for itself. In a world saturated with competing claims on human attention, the invisible might as well not exist. To be overlooked is not humility. It is powerlessness. Better to be controversial, misunderstood, even attacked, than to be ignored. The great courtiers of history understood that presence itself was power. The room that contains a commanding person operates differently than the room without them. That presence is not an accident. It is constructed, maintained, and deployed with deliberate skill. And this is where most people get it completely wrong. They confuse notoriety with embarrassment. They fear the wrong kind of attention. Greene argues that almost any kind of attention is better than none, because attention gives you the raw material to shape your own narrative. The person who is talked about even negatively has far more influence over events than the person who is quietly competent and completely invisible. Every leader who has ever changed anything has first had to master the art of commanding a room, a crowd, a media cycle, a conversation. The 48 laws are, at their core, a manual for exactly this kind of presence. Law 15 and Law 17, crush or unbalance. Two adjacent laws reveal the full spectrum of Greene's strategic thinking. Law 15, crush your enemy totally. If you leave one ember burning, it will eventually reignite. History is filled with rulers who showed mercy at the moment of victory and paid for it years later, when the defeated party returned with compounded fury. The lesson from military history and court intrigue alike. Half measures create future problems. If an enemy must be neutralized, neutralize them completely. Law 17 sits in tension with this. Keep others in suspended terror through unpredictability. Humans desperately need to believe they can predict the behavior of those around them. Predictability gives them a sense of control. A person whose behavior follows no discernible pattern creates a psychological imbalance in everyone nearby. People spend enormous energy trying to figure out such a person, and in doing so, give them disproportionate power over their attention. Used deliberately, unpredictability is one of the most powerful tools in the book. Used carelessly, it simply makes you seem unstable. Law 28. Enter with boldness. Timidity, Greene argues, is not caution. It is a strategic error. When you hesitate before asking for what you want, when you soften a request until it is barely a request, when you approach a negotiation already in retreat, you communicate doubt before a single word has landed, and doubt is contagious. If you don't believe you deserve what you're asking for, the person across from you won't believe it either. Boldness creates its own momentum. People respond to confidence, not because it is always justified, but because confidence signals that the outcome is already settled. Humans are deeply susceptible to the reality someone else presents with enough conviction. Greene does not say, be reckless. He says that any mistake made through boldness is more easily corrected than one made through timidity. The bold person who overshoots can adjust. The timid person who never tried leaves no room to maneuver. History's great schemers operated with strategic patience and explosive boldness at precisely the right moment. They waited until conditions aligned, then acted with total commitment. But this is the part nobody talks about boldness. Without the other laws is just aggression, and aggression without intelligence destroys itself. Law 47. Know when to stop. This is one of Greene's most sobering laws, and the one most often violated by people who have just achieved something significant. The moment of victory is the moment of maximum danger. Fresh from winning, you feel invincible. Your judgment is compromised by success. Your ambition, unchained from the discipline that got you here, reaches for more. And in that reaching, you extend beyond the territory you can defend. Make enemies of people you could have left neutral, and trigger the forces that eventually bring you down. The examples come from military history. Every great conqueror who went one campaigned to many. Every strategist who misread the momentum of their own success. Napoleon after Moscow, the hedge fund that turned extraordinary returns into bankruptcy by refusing to stop. The executive who kept pressing after securing the deal, demanding concessions that turned a grateful partner into a bitter opponent. The law is not about settling for less. It is about the discipline to hold the optimum, rather than destroying it in pursuit of more. And this is where it gets personal. Because you've felt this before, the moment you pushed past where you should have stopped. Law 48. Assume formlessness. The final law is the most philosophical. Everything that takes a fixed form becomes a target. A strategy that is publicly known can be countered. An identity rigidly defined can be attacked at its edges. A reputation built on a single quality can be destroyed the moment that quality fails. The most durable form of power is fluid. Water has no shape of its own. It finds every crack, flows around every obstacle, and over time dissolves stone. This is not an argument for having no principles. It is an argument for having no attachment to a single method, a single identity, a single strategy. The most dangerous people in history were not those with the most fixed plans. They were those who could adapt, abandon what no longer worked, and move to what the moment required. Sun Tzu wrote that supreme excellence in war is to win without fighting. The same applies to every competitive domain. The person who never presents a clear target, who flows rather than charges, wins more often and loses less catastrophically than any armored fortress. What this book is really arguing: strip away the historical anecdotes and the deliberately provocative framing, and the 48 laws of power makes a single, uncomfortable argument. Power is a game always being played, whether you acknowledge it or not. The person who decides not to play the game does not opt out of the game. They simply play it badly, without awareness of the rules, handing advantages to those around them who are playing consciously. And this is where most people get it wrong. They read this book as a manual for manipulation. It isn't. It is a manual for awareness. Greene is not advising readers to become ruthless schemers. He is advising them to understand the dynamics that already exist in every workplace, every relationship, every social hierarchy, and to navigate them with intelligence rather than naivety. The courtier who makes their master feel brilliant is not being dishonest. They are being strategically generous. The person who conceals their intentions is not lying. They are protecting their plans. The person who cultivates their reputation is not manufacturing an illusion. They are shaping the impression that, in social reality, is indistinguishable from fact. The deeper argument is about the gap between how we wish human nature worked and how it actually works. We wish that merit alone determined outcomes. We wish honest communication built trust reliably. We wish people in power were elevated by virtue. History, and Greene documents this across 3,000 years, suggests otherwise. The laws are not prescriptions for making the world worse. They are descriptions of how the world already is. What changes when you see power clearly? Think about a situation in your own life where you worked hard, performed well, and still lost ground. A promotion that went to someone else. A relationship that deteriorated despite your best efforts. A project credited to someone above you. Examine those situations through these laws. What do you see? Not bad luck. Not unfairness. A specific law violated with predictable consequences. You are not powerless. You have been playing with the wrong information. The first shift this book produces is a change from victim thinking to strategic thinking. From why is this happening to me to what dynamics are operating here and how do I navigate them? This is not cynicism, it is clarity. And clarity produces options that naivety forecloses entirely. Once you see that your manager's dismissiveness is insecurity, not superiority, you stop performing for their approval and start managing the dynamic. Once you understand that the seemingly helpful colleague is also gathering intelligence, you become more deliberate about what you share. These are not manipulative responses. They are intelligent ones. The second shift is a recalibration of where you invest your energy. Most people spend their effort on output producing more, working harder and almost no effort on positioning. But in most competitive environments, positioning determines far more than production. The person well positioned to receive credit, visible at the right moments, associated with the right outcomes will rise faster than someone twice as capable who hasn't mastered the art of being seen in the right ways. This is the uncomfortable truth Greene is willing to say plainly, and it is the one most worth hearing. Here is what Robert Greene spent 3,000 years of human history trying to show you. Power is not given. It does not flow naturally to the most talented or the most honest. It flows to those who understand the rules of the game, who know when to be bold and when to wait, when to conceal and when to display, when to crush and when to show mercy, when to advance and when to stop. Fouquet did not lose because he was corrupt. He lost because he forgot. For one magnificent evening, that there can only be one sun. The 48 laws are not a guide to becoming someone you don't want to be. They are a guide to seeing the world as it is, rather than as you wish it were. And in that gap between wish and reality is where every important decision about your career, your relationships, and your life is actually made. Power is a game. The question is not whether to play it, you are already playing it. The question is whether you're playing it consciously, or whether you are Fuka, dazzling everyone at the party just before the arrest. If this changed how you see your world, share it with someone who needs to see it. And subscribe, because understanding the game is the one advantage that compounds forever.